So I'd like to welcome everybody today. I'm Sharon Fisher, President of Soroptimist International, and welcome to our last webinar of 2020. Today we're going to look at progress, our past to our future. And sharing the platform with me today is Ayushi Kundu from Calcutta, India, and Sue Riney from Oak Harbor, Washington. And they're going to, Sue's filling in for Olga Sidenko from Switzerland, who's our other appeal coordinator. And we also have Claire Gilman with us from New York, who is interning with me to complement her education and will present today instead of capturing and asking your questions. I would also like to recognize those who are not always visible, and that is Sue Riney, who puts everything together and handles the technology and fills in to speak when we need her, no matter what. And when we arrive with our material, last minute sometimes, she always makes us look good. Sarah Wilkin at headquarters gets things onto our website and our social media channels. So all the webinars are recorded and available at soroptimistinternational.org a day or two after the webinar. This is our 7th webinar, not bad for the group that had never done one 6 months ago. We will continue to host these after the holiday season. And today we are going to open with a short video. It's only 2 minutes. Sit back and enjoy, and it puts some context into the presentation today.
What defines a generation?
Climate justice! Right now!
Is it just about the year you were born? Or is there something more? We may have lived through different decades, different circumstances, different countries, but we all share in the global, everyday push for our rights, for justice, for a world that is equal. Perhaps what defines our generation isn't our age or our background, but the line in the sand that we have drawn. We take to the streets to speak out against discrimination, and we work tirelessly behind the scenes. We stand up for peace.
We are fed up with the war
and economic justice. We start with a statement and watch it become a movement. We have come a long way, but the fight isn't over, and our rights are still under assault. It is time to take action. Let us be the wake-up call the world needs.
The eyes of all future generations are upon you.
Be the first, the youngest, the best, and then make sure no one is left behind. When someone tries to silence you, raise up your voice.
Let us wage a global struggle.
Change everything, or change just one thing. As long as you do something, whether you're new to changing the world or have been in the fight for a long time.
Each knows exactly why we are here.
We are all together, united, for gender equality. And the future we create for women and girls is up to all of us.
Okay, so that sets our context for our webinar today. And our first speaker is Ayushi Kundu. And Ayushi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sharon. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. The year 2020 was supposed to mark a milestone moment for accelerating the implementation of global commitments to gender equality. With many anniversaries to celebrate this year, including the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, the 25th anniversary of the Women's Conference at Beijing, and 5 years into the Sustainable Development Goals, to name a few. We were hopeful that this landmark year and the beginning of a new decade would reinvigorate our spirits and motivate us to act more urgently to break down the systematic barriers towards achieving a gender equal world both in the public and private lives of women and girls. Needless to say, this year has been nothing close to what we had imagined or anticipated, and much worse, women's rights have been relentlessly trampled, and COVID-19 has put our progress at risk. In our last webinar, we had talked about the Beijing Platform for Action and its agenda on how to remove the barriers that hold women back from equal participation in all areas of life, and how our federation projects were contributing to this agenda. Despite commitments to the 12 critical areas of concern and some progress, not a single country in the world today can claim to have achieved gender equality. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals that we all support are the blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future. They address the global challenges we are facing. They define the world we want. Due to COVID-19, we basically tried to cancel 2020. The multi-generational campaign launched by UN Women has been rescheduled for 2021. The global campaign for gender equality is titled Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights for an Equal Future. It is intended to accelerate progress on the 2030 agenda. The Generation Equality Forum presents a vital moment in this mobilization. It is a civil society centered, multi-stakeholder, global gathering for gender equality, fundamentally rooted in the same logic that made the momentous advance of the adoption of the Beijing Platform for Action possible 25 years ago. This is the power of activism, feminist solidarity, and youth leadership to achieve transformative change. This campaign aims to bring together the next generation of women's rights activists with those gender equality advocates and visionaries who were instrumental in creating the Beijing Platform for Action over 25 years ago. Collectively, change makers of all ages can tackle the unfinished business of empowering women. On the call today are those who were in Beijing and those who were yet to be born. Generation Equality Forum has four key objectives and will be led by action coalitions for the Decade of Action to 2030. Civil society and international organizations like Soroptimist International are called upon to engage. The short form of these objectives is action, conversations, investment, and delivering and reporting results. These action coalitions will have themes to make progress for women and girls that includes gender-based violence, economic justice and rights, sexual and reproductive health and rights, climate justice, technology for gender equality, and feminist movements and leadership. Generation Equality Action Coalitions will advance new partnerships, implement targeted solutions and report annually on progress towards change, especially for women and girls left behind. During one of our late night meetings, I happened to ask SI President Sharon Fisher, did you collaborate with UN Women while developing the 2019-2021 President's Appeal, The Road to Equality? She certainly had not. However, the similarities are remarkable, which means that Soroptimist International has a head start in responding to the generation equality and the urgent actions requested. So today we are going to take our bus and navigate on another road, a road into our past that will show we have been standing up for women for almost 100 years. We are going to shine a light on issues and projects that we have known were critical before Beijing and before the Sustainable Development Goals. Since 1921, Soroptimist has worked tirelessly for advancing the status of women, with each president naming a theme to lead her term. In 1975, Soroptimist International started international projects supported by members around the world. Those projects are prime examples of the requests in the Generation Equality campaign. Just like the objective of creating conversations on the topics of the road to equality, the Generation Equality Campaign will develop blueprints for action, launch tools to create digital public conversations, and use ideas, data, and evidence to develop actions for each theme. Today, we are going to see how international Soroptimist projects have already achieved tangible results as envisaged by Generation Equality and look at the future we want. The title of our conversation today is Progress, from our past to our future. We are going to explore our past international projects during the last 25 years since Beijing and see how our actions have educated our members about issues impacting women and girls and solutions evidenced by the impact of our projects. We are also going to revisit our international projects before Beijing to show we were already living up to our commitment of establishing a gender equal world for women and girls before international goals and coalitions came into effect. I now hand over the floor to President Sharon Fisher.
Thank you, Ayushi, for setting the stage for today's conversation. And I'll start by saying, do you believe that all women are linked together by an invisible chain? If you had been present at the 4th Conference for Women in Beijing in 1995, you would have seen it and you would have felt it. We were 35,000 strong, all colors, all creeds, and all causes. This is a statement from past SIA President Tess Cho, who conducted a workshop in Beijing, and this was published in one of our magazines, and I thought it was so fitting to share today. Soroptimist International led 3 kinds of international projects in the past. First, we were one of 5 partners in Project 50. There was 4 other international women's organizations besides us where clubs would join together for a project. We also had quadrennial projects introduced by federations on a rotation, and they lasted for 4 years. And then in 1981, President Catherine Salt thought even more work could be done and asked all members to sacrifice something on International Day, December 10th, or Human Rights Day, and donate that cost to the President's appeal, and an annual project named by the international president. In the last decade, most of these projects have been for a 2-year duration, the same as the president's term. The early projects covered topics like refugees, education, skills training, health, water, sanitation, food security, housing, leadership, post-conflict support, disaster relief, gender violence, and more. Not at all unsimilar to what we do today. One of the very first projects undertaken by Soroptimist International was in the Maldives. This project provided training for paramedics and medical boats. I think 14 boats were purchased to carry health workers, medical drugs and supplies to people in the remote islands in the Indian Ocean. In Barbados, staff were trained for daycare centers and equipment was provided. At the same time, there was a project in Fiji where young women were trained to be leaders in their communities. In the year of shelters for homeless in the Dominican Republic, a pilot project to do a makeover on a shanty town included cleaning up their community, improvements with a focus on water and sanitation, followed by food security, healthcare, and skills training. In Western Samoa, women were trained in agriculture to improve food security. Other projects during this time were in Malaysia, where they worked on refugees, the Philippines, refugees, Ghana, food security, the Sudan, maternal health, Nigeria, harmful traditional practices, Bangladesh, income generation, Lesotho, technology and training, Uganda, HIV/AIDS, in India, an aquaculture project, Somalia, refugee victims of violence. That was the range of projects, and they're not unsimilar to what we do today. A water project in Senegal used local Soroptimists to provide clean water and teach the women how to maintain the equipment and learn about sanitation, health, and more. In Peru, again with the help of local Soroptimists, the project covered 14 village areas and included women's development and empowerment. In Bangladesh, the Sight Savers Project provided annual checkups for mothers and their children to diagnose and treat eye care, preventing blindness. Around this time, another project known as SIAM, Soroptimist International AIDS Mediation in Thailand, provided AIDS education and alternatives to girls being trafficked to the cities. To start, 10 villages were included, but the success spread much further. I've since been told by past President Margaret Lobo that hundreds of villages actually adopted those strategies. Landmines were the focus of many projects, including Limbs for Life, to restore dignity to victims of landmines. Stop Trafficking introduced us to trafficking, and others I remember fondly included the Dignity Program for economic empowerment in Paraguay, Children of Peace in Vietnam, where children victims were given safety, Rollback Malaria, preventing malaria by providing nets for women and children for which they slept under to prevent being having a mosquito bite, and Restoring Dignity. This was a very special project that I remember so clearly. I'd never heard of a fistula, but it was a partnership with the Hamlin Fistula Relief to give independence to those fistula patients who could not be completely cured. Project Independence, Women Survivors of War, was a very, very moving project, I'll say. And I'm going to return to the article that Tess Cho wrote, who met a woman from Rwanda when she was in Beijing. And she said for the purpose of practicing her French, she spotted this lady and she decided to talk to her because she wanted to practice her French. So struck up a conversation. But she did far more than practice French once the conversation started. This woman had moved heaven and earth to get to Beijing so she could tell her story. Soldiers had appeared at her home, giving her just enough time to shove her 2 young sons under the bed and telling them to be quiet. Her husband was a Tutsi. She begged the soldiers not to take her husband, but to no avail, as they knelt him in front of the sofa and repeatedly shot him in the head. She said this was not a unique story. Tess had the opportunity to then join the study tour to Rwanda for Project Independence years later to meet women from the project. Here, she met more women and heard more stories. And on returning, she told herself, Tess, don't take for granted the water or the light or the food we eat when these women with their hardships are still able to find happiness after so many horrors and having so little. Soroptimist sponsored and wrote letters to women in this project, and I have heard over the years so many emotional stories where members met the women they were communicating with and sponsoring, and they met them for the first time on their study tour and broke down in tears of joy because they felt a sisterhood. The project was for women in Rwanda, Afghanistan, and Bosnia. And Dawn Marie Lemons was the project liaison for that project. And she was with us this morning and talking a bit. Project Sierra. And I had the privilege of visiting this project and meeting 14 to 16-year-old mothers who were victimized during the conflict and found themselves homeless with babies. They were, I guess you could say, the sex slaves of the soldiers. They attended skills classes while the babies were cared for, and then they were able to either go back to school or start small businesses. And the work to reunite the girls with family was highly successful. They had been homeless and on the street with their babies and between 14 and 16 years old. And this was another very popular project. I think Alice visited. I know Bev Bucher, who's on the call, and I visited. And it was, I guess you could say it was life-changing, but it was really thought-provoking. I was determined to learn how to tie one of those kerchiefs on my head, so the lady saw me trying, and she took hers off and helped me tie it. And I said, is it right? Did I do it right? And she said, however you tie it, it's right. So I felt pretty good. I usually show that picture and say, can you tell which one's me? And these skills training, they did sewing, hairdressing, batik design, and catering. And the two pictures on the top are the groups of girls in the different communities. We were in 5 communities with centers. And it was an amazing trip, and we had such a wonderful time. So I think there was 2 or 3 study tours to Sierra Leone. And fast forward today, we're back in Sierra Leone with one of the Road to Equality projects. So that's been great. It's good. The next project, near and dear, is Birthing in the Pacific, and this was named by Alice Wells. And we'll hear from her afterwards about, so I know she's got some fabulous stories to share. This was a maternal health project in Papua New Guinea, training birthing attendants. And I recall Alice sharing how the women gave birth alone, or they needed to travel long distances to what might still be very unsanitary and unsafe. And she'll share with us, but I remember her telling us how they were giving birth on a dirt floor with no medical attention, no medicine, just an amazing story. And this was a project that was brought about from the Southwest Pacific Federation. We moved on then to See Solar, Cook Solar, which was Anne Garvey's project, where girls were not able to study at nighttime. It was dark, so they used solar lighting to be able to do their lessons, and also for cooking utensils. And then we went to Nepal, and that was another good project. We had about 20 projects underway there. The top left there was a project with Days for Girls, and if you see, for menstrual hygiene, and if you see the little hut there beside that picture, they practice in Western Nepal. They practice chapati, which means if you've got your period, you are either cursed or you are dirty. And you need to go maybe with the animals, and in that case, in that little hut outside, 24/7 while you've got your period. At the time that was shared with me, one girl had a snake bite and died. There were 7 girls that had died that winter in those huts, exposure and so on and so forth. I'll be interested to have Amrita tell us a little bit about that practice. It's more in particular rural areas of Nepal, but we were in 5 villages, and they were very much practicing that. So I think we targeted might not be the right word, but we encompassed 15,000 girls in that project with Days for Girls to educate them on how it was not necessary to have that happen. And we did computer literacy. You'll recognize Yoko Ichikatani, who had that horrific accident a few years ago and is not able to travel with us anymore. But this project was a village that when they first started working in the village, it had an 8% literacy rate. And they brought something like 12,000 women were able to read after they've been there 20 years. So we put up a computer lab for them, and it was a really successful project. And in the middle is the scholarship chairman and his wife, who came to Reno, Nevada to visit family the first time out of Nepal. And we were talking to them, and they run a project in Tulipakari Village, which is sponsored by a club in Reno, Nevada. And we asked the lady, well, what do you think of Nevada? And she said, I don't know where all the cars are going, because the little village they live in has just a couple of dirt roads, and that's it, and not much more. So it was, you don't realize how well we live and how privileged we are until you see the way some of these people live. And yet, if they have the basics and they can grow food, it's fantastic. And that project came to be with that club because a gentleman from that village was quite smart, and he was encouraged to go to Kathmandu to go to college, and he did. And he was making money as a tour guide. And a member from the Truckee Meadows Soroptimist Club was having a tour, and they got talking. And they connected, and she convinced him to come back to the United States to go to university. And she sponsored him, and he lived in in Reno, Nevada, and went to university. Today, he's got his own company with, I think at the time, 105 patents to his name in electrical engineering. And his customers are Ford Aerospace and et cetera, et cetera. And he does some integral parts for the satellite industry. And he still convinced them to go back and sponsor his village so that they could be taken care of. And he said when the satellites first went over Tulipakari village, it was a brown spot. But now when the satellites go over, it's green. And they talk about the animals were skinny and the bones were hanging, but now they're flush, and the people have smiles on their face, whereas before not so much. They were impacted by the earthquake, but they've this club built a dormitory so that the girls could come to school and stay in the dormitory and not travel back and forth long distances. So we put a computer library into their village for both the girls in school, and we also, for the village women, for the women's circle in the village, and they all have a big schedule and they all take turns, and then we also put some girls through school there. And the next project, this is getting into current times, is Women, Water, and Leadership. And one of the projects I mentioned before had all the similarities of this project, where they were teaching women how to find water, contain water, and maintain their equipment. In some of these countries, it's not so much about, when they put a well in, you can't just go away and leave it. You have to be able to maintain it and do the mechanical pieces. And so that's always really important in these projects. But I know Bev visited this property, I think, Bev, before all of the work started, and it was almost a dust bowl. And now it's green and lush. And they did projects in Indonesia and in Bulgaria also. So that was a really successful project. And I will say that over the years, I've always looked forward to hearing about these new projects, because every single time I learn more about women and girls less fortunate. And just when you think you've heard it all, something shocks you to the core and you want to take action. These projects all fit multiple goals for gender equality, multiple goals of the Sustainable Development Goals, and critical areas of concern with Beijing. And I think by working together on these global projects, we have a bigger impact. We learn more and therefore contribute to the 2030 agenda. And we help those women who are left behind. Sue is going to update you on our latest Road to Equality project and give you an updated financial report on the project. And Sue, the floor is yours.
Right. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to all of you. And it's an honor to be able to share this information that our President's Appeal co-coordinator, Olga Sedenko, pulled together for this presentation. It's middle of night for her in Switzerland, and so I'm pleased to be able to do so. Just last week, on December 10th, we were delighted to announce a superb new Road to Equality Appeal project supporting the Lugari Youth Leadership and Mentoring Training Camp in the Lugari district of Kakamega County in Western Kenya. The appeal is gathering donations and plans to support the youth leadership and mentoring training held at the Lugari Community Resource Center, led by Kayenga Wasiki, CEO and President of the Willing Hearts International Society, Canada. This 8 days skills camp gives girls between the ages of 13 and 17 the opportunity to learn from experienced women, mostly elder volunteers, and train them on new skills in a safe and friendly environment. The topics they cover during this training completely match with all 6 themes of the President's Appeal, such as FGM, child marriage, human trafficking, violence against women and girls, migration, and older women. Armed with projects for positive change and a commitment to return to their schools and home communities where they recruit their peers, share the knowledge, and implement the projects as teams. Changes begin exactly there, where the result is the most sustainable. The leadership program was set to celebrate its 10th anniversary in 2020. However, due to COVID restraints, it was not possible to hold the camp this year, but it is hoped that the next camp will take place in 2021. Our Road to Equality appeal is planning to help the program realize this goal and is looking to support 200 to 250 girls at $105 or 80 pounds each, covering the cost of meals, transportation, and training materials for each girl who attends this empowering program of workshops and activities. They learn life skills such as leadership, governance and work ethics, communication, media literacy, financial independence and effective marketing, human rights, menstrual hygiene management, health, safety and violence prevention, career choices and motivational techniques, community connection and project management. Sensitive issues such as female genital mutilation, FGM, and human trafficking and self-defense are also discussed openly and at length. The Road to Equality has already awarded $10,000 towards vital building work needed at the community center to help house the girls during their time at the camp in response to the restrictions and measures introduced during COVID-19. This investment has produced a long-term investment, creating a more hospitable environment for the training of all future girls. The camp prepares the girls to be able to return to their schools as leaders and to pass on what they have learned to others during the school year. While the formal training is important, but so is the networking and playtime. They take part in such sports as soccer and netball, which is a type of basketball, cooling down after all the running around with gentle stretches, breathing, and yoga. Each year, the girls then select at the end of the camp their own Girl of the Year. And often these girls come back to assist in the following years. Penny, who was Girl of the Year in 2015, says, "All you need is a big heart, love, and laughter, and you can achieve what you want. No matter what you have, a way will emerge." This is also the perfect description of the founder and director of the program, Kayenga Wasiki, who spends a large portion of her life traveling the world to find sponsors for the Lugari Community Resource Center and the YLT program. Marianne, another Year of the Girl for 2019, says, "My goal is to grow up and be just like Madame Wasiki and the other Soroptimists I have met during the course of the camp." All the girls submit a one-page proposal for the community project, including resources required and the expected measurable outcome. This year's winner devised a plan to make shower caps out of recycled plastic bags. Each girl receives a certificate of attendance and the menstrual hygiene kit by one of the many guests attending, including Soroptimists from Eldoret and Mumias. To close the camp, the mentors, friends, teachers, and participants celebrate an emotional circle of transition by lighting the girls' candles as a symbol of love, wisdom, and bravery. For me, this is an absolutely amazing project for us to participate in, where girls and women, no matter how old they are, can gather together to learn, to teach, to inspire, and to lead. At the age of 14 or 15, girls are taking their first steps as young women. They have fears, but also big hopes and ambitions to change the world. When women like us share our experiences and knowledge with them, motivate and support them on the way, they can go forward and really change the world, step by step. And this is what we call sustainability. But I'd like to finish with a sentence that shows the main goal of the Lugari Youth Training Camp. They are to illumine and shine like stars in darksome nights as they champion their way on their new journey of leadership. And now for an update on funds raised for the appeal. Since the beginning of Sharon's biennium, we have raised 133,848 British pounds. And every donation is greatly appreciated. Even in this time of COVID-19, when live events have not been possible and fundraising has been difficult, Soroptimists still have been very generous in financing our projects that support women and girls. Every 6 months, Global Media Campaign, which we've discussed on our prior webinars, they receive 15,000 British pounds to finance our Soroptimist 6. The 6 activists from Kenya, Nigeria, Somalia, Gambia, and Sierra Leone who speak out loud on the radio, TV, and through social media about the harmful practices of FGM and call for an end to the culture of cutting girls. We've also supported a Western Canada regional forum at the beginning of the year with $2,000 US. We're so very grateful to every Soroptimist and every club who supports the President's appeal. And through your donations, as well as your own advocacy and awareness actions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll now turn it back over to Sharon.
Thanks, Sue. That was great. I love that project. It's so great. And she's so dynamic herself that it's hard not to like it. I'd now like to introduce Claire Gilman. Claire is a student in New York who is going to address the other part of generation equality. As those of you that have been at this for a very long time, the activist part, for example, those who were at Beijing or heard about Beijing, we are in that group. I attended an event in Vancouver where past SIA President Joyce Blake called a meeting at a downtown hotel, and we all eagerly went down to listen to her talk because she was a great talker, and she was sharing her experience from Beijing at the conference in 1985. I was probably in my first year of membership and in my young 30s at the time. But I heard her story as a younger member, and I didn't really understand it because I was so new to this, to the service part of things. But what we are being asked to do now in generation equality is to create space and work together and help younger women understand the journey that we've been on. You will note that I am a bit older than Olga and Ayushi. Ayushi, I think you're 28 and Olga's in her 30s. Claire, I'm not even going to ask how old you are because we'll all feel bad. These young women are eager to learn, they're eager to participate, they just need a chance. We can all mentor a younger person, and I know many of you already do. So I've asked Claire today to share her experiences. Claire, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Sharon. Hi, everyone. I'm Claire. I'm currently a junior in college at Bucknell University, which is in Pennsylvania. I'm very happy to be speaking with you all today and sharing another perspective. I've had the opportunity to work with Soroptimist for 2 years now. Last summer, I was a youth delegate, while this past summer and semester, I've interned with Sharon and her presidential appeal. Hopefully, some of you recognize me from the Q&A section of previous webinars if you were able to make them. Last summer, I also interned with Dan Perel and the NGO Major Group around the time for the HLPF, which presented me with a lot of opportunities to be engaged. Because of my participation and interest in these spheres, we thought it'd be interesting to share a different perspective, one from the younger generation. The UN, organizations, and projects preach the importance of engaging the younger generation, and we talk a lot about generation equality. This specifically reminds me of a side event I attended 2 summers ago that discussed empowering young people. It is clear that there is a want for involvement from all generations, but I think the younger generation is often underestimated. I'm speaking for my generation when I say we want to be involved, probably more than you realize. Not all of us can be Greta Thunberg, and while I wish I could sail across the ocean and force people and political leaders to listen to me and to act, I know that part of my opportunity to be a part of the change is limited by age and what is available to me. Me and other people my age not doing something courageous such as Greta Thunberg does not mean we don't want to or that we are not continuously growing and learning. I think something that needs to change is the space created for the younger generations to truly participate. I was talking to my grandma about me presenting the other week and my thoughts on it. And she said to me, every generation wants to be involved and they think that they should be, but it's about allowing the multiple perspectives to be heard and work together, and that the opportunities made available is everyone's job. It's more than just checking another box by allowing us a seat at the table. It's about working together, listening to one another, and wanting these multiple opinions and perspectives. I know there's the assumption that we do not, being younger, have as much knowledge or experience or whatever it may be. And while that may be true in some aspects, it should also be acknowledged that we want to engage, we want to learn, and we want to play a role because we understand this is our future that is being discussed. I think something also important to note is that we are actively being engaged through our education. Being that I'm an international relations major with a thematic track of sustainability and development, I've personally taken a number of classes that specifically discuss the UN and our involvement in the future. Because of my intern experience, I've been able to share things I've learned, resources, and further analysis to my peers and to my professors. In my human security class, my final presentation was on how entities are ensuring human security, where I specifically discussed the UN, the SDGs, and the MDGs. I also just completed a third world development course where in our weekly reflections, I was able to share my personal experiences and opinions I've created with my professor in writing assignments as well as participating in class discussions. I specifically shared what I've learned from one of SI's microfinancing projects to counter an article's argument that microfinancing is hindering. My professor loved hearing about my engagement in the organization and an alternative personal opinion. These types of conversations and my opportunity to share and build on my experiences is not only limited to major specific courses. I took an Intro to Environmental course that is provided to all underclassmen, where I wrote my final paper on the environmental SDGs and MDGs. And an Intro Political Science class freshman year, we learned the structure, foundation, and involvement of the UN in our international community. Reflecting on this makes me realize, and I hope the same for you, that when we are truly interested, we find ways to learn more and how to apply it. I'm extremely grateful that I do have the opportunity to be engaged and that people like Sharon, Dan Perel, and Betty Levy have created a space for me to grow. I think the main point I'm trying to make is that all ages need the opportunity to be at the table and to grow and make change, and that we all have the same desire to learn. It's about putting some of the responsibilities in our hands because it is our future and we do care, but that it doesn't stop there. It must happen with the intent to listen and work together in order to move forwards and accomplish what we all want to accomplish together. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. That was great. And the message is we are all in this together. We've been hearing that a lot lately with COVID-19, but when it comes to the agenda that and the journey that we're on, we are all in this together, and we must work together. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I can't do this for another 50 years, obviously. So we are reliant on having the younger generation come up and work with us. And there's no point them making all the mistakes we've made. We can help them avoid that. So today we bring together our past, our present, and most importantly, our future. The future we want is something we will need to work for, do things a bit differently, continue learning, working together to meet the goals of a sustainable future, and leave no one behind.